That's a signal for everyone to
Oh, you did
mute,
it.
please.
Welcome to the
Okay.
Verse Virtual monthly. It's July already, so the monthly reading for Verse Virtual. And if you're not going to be one of the features, please mute yourself. And you're not me. Today we have two great features, Charles Harper Webb and Ron Koertge, and we're going to start with Charles Webb. And I'm going to introduce him first. Charles Harper Webb has published 12 collections of poetry. His latest, Side Bend World, was published by the University of Pittsburgh Press. A new collection will be out from Longleaf Press in early 2025. Red Hen Press published his novel Ursula Lake in spring 2022. Recipients of grants from Whiting and Guggenheim Foundations, Webb is Professor Emeritus at California State University, Long Beach, where he taught creative writing until this spring, when he took early retirement. Well, happy retirement and welcome to the fold. I hope that you enjoy it and it doesn't drive you nuts. Meanwhile, we would love to hear some of your poems.
All right, let me remember to start my watch. Okay, the first poem that I'm going to read is based on the idea, which you may have heard, that if you that given enough time and monkeys banging on typewriters, one will type Shakespeare's complete plays. That's known, as I understand it, as the infinite monkey theorem, and it's worth remembering. So this poem is called Lucky Monkey. Many, of course, will butcher the bard's best. Hamlet become a tiny sandwich, Polonius inhaling a basketball. One macaque will write King Lear, but follow with the complete works of Danielle Steele. Somewhere, though, some monkey will, after months in isolation, lift his hands from the keys, chew pensively on a flea he's pinched off his head, and contemplate from the treetop of his monkey brain the pages cluttering his nest of leaves. By purest chance, he'll stack them all in the right order and bind them into folios. He'll stretch his fingers, flex his opposable thumbs, then, as monkey keyboards clatter on, and somewhere in infinity, dead billions wait for happier versions of their canceled lives, the monkey will sashay outside into a jungle full of red-rumped females and that yellow fruit he's missed so much. That poem seems to say something to me about writing, because I think whenever I come up with something that I like, I think I'm a lucky monkey. It's just kind of never know quite how it happens. Here's a poem that has gotten, it's surprising, my son has gotten older. He doesn't stop. I mean, I stop. I don't get any older, but my son keeps getting older. But this was written when he had his first girlfriend, and I was driving them to of all things, a Hungarian dance, because she was Hungarian. This is called Chauffeur. How comfortably they lean into each other in my car's back seat. The boy I taught to hit a curve and play guitar, embraced by the blonde girl from Hungary. They know things they're certain no one else can know. Having become, as the Bible says, one flesh, they see even those whose love created them as stowaways to be booted off their ship. They laugh to see us growing smaller as hot winds shove their sails toward isles of orchids and spice, azure lagoons that teem with fish painted in crimsons, emeralds, tangerines, no eyes but theirs fully perceive. They've heard from us how quickly calm seas can summon waves to smash them, winds to tear their sails and hurl them onto shores where sun can't pierce the hail of pumice and brimstone. But they know adults are full of baseless fears. My son, I see as I change lanes, has placed his head in the girl's lap. He shuts his eyes. She shuts hers too, stroking his hair, then folds over him like a flower closing for the night. Let's see. Yeah, it's so weird to be reading and hear nothing, but that's okay. I appreciate the flailing in the little pictures. When I was a little boy, we had a babysitter who seemed to me to be just ancient as the world. I mean, the pyramids were nothing next to her, and her name was Granny Clark. That's what we called her, and she makes an appearance in this poem, and the title of the poem is Ice, I-C-E. Ice was Granny Clark's cure for all ills. Ice for a banged forehead or skinned knee. Ice for headache, sniffles, fever. Ice for chills, for bruised feelings, a drink from the ice box, as she still called it. In the old days, she explained, people chopped lake ice in winter and stored it in ice houses underground. Twice a week, the Iceman brought swinging from tongs a sweating block and plopped it in the box. She'd hoped back then to be an ice girl. Now, kids grown, husband fled to a bank teller with frosted hair. She sips iced tea on her porch and thinks how Inuit families would ease an old sick grandma's pain with special herbs. Thank you for spending time with us. Return in a new body soon, the tribe would croon, then move away, entrusting her to ice. Okay, well, an election is coming up. We can't avoid it. And this is a poem I wrote some time ago about difficulties that surround any kind of an election, and and trying to be as representative as possible. This is a prose poem, and it's called The New Machines. Because of problems balloting, the High Court mandates new machines. Say a man means to vote for Hank Handwringer and his vow to outlaw death, yet inks the oval for Hiram Humperdump, who favors government by entrails of chickens. To be fail-safe, foolproof has been deemed offensive. Each machine must record the thought process behind each vote. To fend off tabulator error, the machines record all tabulators' brain waves, as well as their genomes, since genes determine. There's debate. The machines must note that too. Our founders limited the vote to adult white male property-owning citizens. Improved ethics widened the circle to adult white male citizens, then to all adult male citizens, then to all adult citizens except felons and mental defectives. But felons have opinions. Psychotics may have fascinating ones. The intellectually disabled deserve their say. If they can't say it, we must find out what they mean and count that too. What about children and the pets we love and the farm animals who give their all for us and wild animals from whom we've taken much? How about birds, insects, and plants? Don't slight our vegetable friends. Other countries should have input. All living things should, even microbes. The time required for vote counting may well exceed the presidential term. In this event, armies will fight, the winning general to be appointed acting president, or for short, king. When the king dies, his son will take his place. If he has no son or a weak one, new armies will fight until all power rests with one man. Meanwhile, forgotten in some cave, perhaps still counting the machines. Thank you. Yeah, this shuddering, this is great. I like it actually. Uh, here's a poem of a type that I rarely do, uh, which is a shape poem. I'm gonna try to show you this, but you may not be able to see it. I don't know. I don't know. Can you see that at all? It's supposed to be shaped like a chocolate bunny. And and I just got such a kick out of it that I had to put it in that. But this is a poem called Night of the Lepus. And some of you who are as old as I am may remember that that was a stupid horror film, you know, from long ago about monster bunnies. There were all kinds of animals that were being transformed by things nuclear and things, you know, things atomic and things from outer space. And I guess they were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, and they came up with monster bunnies. So this is called Night of the Lepus. The meteor that hits his hutches on Palm Sunday is so small the farmer barely stirs in bed. Next morning, though, farm and farmer are gone, not eaten, burned, or smothered in star slime, smashed to muddy ooze by giant thumper feet. I forget how the crew cut hero, poisoned carrots, Crater Lake as a stew pot, kills the monsters. I recall reaction shots, bearded Paul Bunyans in skivvy fouling fear, intercut with snarling, buck-toothed, powder-puff-tailed mutant bunnies. Ogled by a microscope, the curvy heroine would prove to support enough fanged jaws, tentacles, and globs of goo to cast a million horror shows. Science, like life, is scary stuff. Yet true cuddliness exists. Some long ears always bring a smile. Some fur seems made to snuggle. Some eyes glow too gently opaline to chill the scariest kid's spine. Some crinkly noses couldn't possibly drag scaly death behind. In this world so wild to kill us all, some things are just too cute to be monsters. All right, let's see. I'm gonna do like two more or maybe just one more. I don't want to run over. Okay, I'll do two because this one actually does something I rarely do, which is rhyme. Um, and this is called Regrets Only. The poem or the title taken from the RSVP kinds of things where they want you to only reply if you can't come. I just think regrets only is a funny thing. So I wrote this, regrets only. That I've never caught a tarpon or a golden trout. That in 3 years of homeroom, I never asked Gwen out. That I'm not 100 pounds more muscular and a foot taller. That Lassie won't come home to me, however loud I call her. That I wasn't born on a mountaintop in Tennessee, and I'm not the leader of the club that's made for you and me. That I've never seen my daughter. She's never seen my son, that rotting in or plied out, my wisdom teeth imparted none, that I didn't write cashmere or paint cornfield with crows, that princesses have kissed me, but I stayed a toad, that the church had great acoustics on the day that I confessed, that survival of the kindest gets no credit on the test, that each time I see Othello, Desdemona dies, that life is not a bowl of cherries or a glop of apple pie, that death is not a mom soothing, sleep tight, and won't put down that stupid scythe. seem to be thinking about death. I can't imagine why, having retired and getting older by the millisecond. So this is the last one I'm going to do. I just want you. It concerns a Shakespearean type fool who I've named Dipstick. And this is like his last soliloquy, and it's called, strangely enough, The Last Soliloquy of Dipstick the Fool. After 40 years as royal fool, he's still funny as he capers through the court, concocting hijinks and bedding chambermaids. But his parents are dead. His wife is bitter as peach pits. His hearing's bad. His right hip aches. He gets up 5 times a night to pee. His favorite daughter's clinically depressed, and his dog, older in dog years than he is, moans and wheezes constantly. He thought he would do something great, like invent calculus, cure gout, discover America. Now he understands he's peaked at fool. Leaning on an oak tree to take weight off his hip, he looks out at the audience as a single acorn bounces off his nose. The chemistry of life, he begins, geysers up into what we know as joy. Another acorn strikes his fool's cap and balances. He brushes it away. All living things feel this joy. Roaches and lumpfish and least bitterns and sea urchins and wildebeests, he says. Even bladderworts and tetanus germs feel it. That's why we fight so hard not to die. He looks up at the ceiling, ablaze with lights. Thank you, sky, for being blue and full of clouds and oxygen. He stretches out his arms toward the audience. Thank you, sea, for fish and storms and waves to surf and whales that induce in good people a suitable humility. Thank you, maggots, for feeding lizards, frogs, and birds and hastening decay. Thank you, too, feces, for fertilizing fields and clearing out my guts so that I have more room for plum pudding and brandy. Glorious dirt, he shouts, for pushing things up and taking back what's fallen down. Glorious trees for rope swings and shade and whispering leaves and teaching children to love green. Glorious audience for applauding my shtick year after year. Glorious me for never taking myself too seriously. While he continues shouting glorious and joy, stage hands clear away the oak, which turns out to have wheels. They sweep dropped acorns off the stage, then exit, followed by the audience. Dipstick stands alone in his fool cap with his bad hip. One firefly spotlights his grin. Thank you. Thanks for all the fluttering. It was appreciated.
I don't know if you saw the fancy new reaction options that Zoom affords people.
Oh, no, I didn't see any of
I
that.
sent up
I'm always afraid
balloons,
I'll lose
rocket
my place
ships.
when I'm reading.
Yeah, all kinds of celebratory junk.
Well, I'll have to read it now, but I won't read it before Ron reads, of course.
Well, I'll send some up again. so
Okay,
you
good,
can-
thanks.
There they are.
Oh, cool.
Okay. And now I'll introduce Ron and put up a link to his work. And there is a link that I posted further up the chat for Charles' books. So you can certainly order them, although he's quite present online and you'll easily be able to find them. Okay. Among Ron Koertge's poetry awards are grants from the California Arts Council and the National Endowment for the Arts. In 2017, he was awarded a Pushcart Prize. 2019 Independent Publishers Book Award Silver Medal for Olympusville. He's also part of the Best American Poetry Series of 1999 and 2006, and the author of more than a dozen books of poems. The most recent are Yellow Moving Van from the University of Pittsburgh Press and I Dreamed I Was Emily Dickinson's Boyfriend from Red Hen Press. And I'll put up a Goodreads link with a lot of those books listed. And I'm sure you can find, if not brand new, some of them in used copies. So let me put that up right now, and then you go on ahead and read, Ron.
Okay, you can hear me, right? Great, all right. I'm going to start with a poem that has a phone number in it, and except for Alexandra, you're all old enough to remember when phone numbers had letters and names. My phone number in Collinsville, where I was born, was Dickens 41692. The title of this poem is Parkview 1, 9426. This takes us back in time. Remember when there was a pad of paper with a phone, and that was attached to the wall by a long leash? Usually there was a partial shopping list there, or the date of a doctor's appointment. Sometimes the small pages were torn away, but when they weren't, they made up a short, illustrated diary featuring the ever-popular stars and bolts of lightning. I'm doing my timing, thank you. Snowmen never went out of style, or stick figures holding hands. And of course, heading the list of doodles should be initials inside of lopsided hearts, usually with one of Cupid's darts piercing the left atrium. But every now and then the darts turn to arrows, many arrows with wicked-looking barbs, to show how wrong love can go while simply talking on the telephone. Seems to have happened to all of us. Good. When you guys were talking earlier about publication and you know, where to send and how to send and whom to resist, I want to show you the title of this book. It looks backwards to me. But all I want to say is, if you have anything to say about the covers of your book, make it as interesting as possible. The editor at Red Hen Press, whose husband put the title together, told me not too long ago how many people stopped because the title was arresting. So get a good title, get a good book cover, have something to do with that. You know, don't just let them do it. Let's see if I want to, yeah, I can do this one. This is called Double Vision. This is autobiographical in the sense of when I was in high school, I did date one of the twins in my little high school, the Sims girls. So this poem is about basically that, double vision. In high school, the most popular girls were the Johnson twins, Jane and Joan. I was attracted to Jane and left a note in her locker. Joan met me after social studies. She said Jane liked me too, and yet her eyes, Joan's, were flirty and provocative. Joan told me to meet Jane after school, and when we were alone, Jane whispered, "Kiss me, use a lot of tongue, and call me Joan." At the spring fling, as Jane and I danced, Joan cut in, and then Jane returned, and she and Joan danced together. I got dizzy and had to be driven home by Jane, although it could have been Joan in an identical lavender formal. I was always on edge. Whose hand was I holding? Whose voice was on that telephone? Who wanted to borrow my math homework? Who was flirting with my friend Ricky? I was 16. I thought love was something on a record, music pouring out of the dashboard. The night we broke up, Jane was joined by her sister. As I pulled away from that house for the last time, one was crying and one was waving. But which one? like Charles, I don't write a lot in rhyme or in any fixed forms. But I was reading at a girls' school in New York. Rich girls, private school, smart as hell, difficult to work with, snarky, privileged. And after the reading in Q&A, one of them said, well, I found that reading entertaining, but clearly you don't know how to do anything but that. You can't even rhyme. So I wrote a rhymed poem, not for her. I never want to see her again, but I did write some couplets. This is an easygoing poem because I live across the street, or I used to, across the street from the library, and I would see all the people before 11 o'clock waiting to get in, which I thought was very encouraging, making the library a popular place. So one morning, it's just, you know how poems happen. You keep your mind available and the poem steps in. So the poem stepped in that morning, and brought along some rhyming words, waiting for the library to open. A man in a black hat stands off to one side. Ill at ease, he makes enough smoke to calm bees. Someone scolds her phone. If you don't love me, why did you talk about how things might be? Cars speed past, celebrating love on the rocks. A young woman defiantly pulls up her faded socks. When the enormous door finally swings open, we enter cautiously like people at the ocean. Inside, I sit beside a plaster bust of Walt Whitman, who celebrated all sorts of men and women, but especially Peter Doyle, who drove a streetcar and sported an extremely attractive scar. Some days, Walt would bring dandelion wine and accompany Peter to the end of the line, every atom of him thinking of the evening ahead, bathwater running, Peter's blue suit crumpled on the bed. I have time for two more. This poem called The Uneasy Trance Will Never Break. The title comes from a poet named A. Alvarez, who I don't know, but I read every morning. A lot of you read, I hope, other poets to see what's going on and to see whom, which is the correct pronoun, whom you can steal from, because I'm just felonious when it comes to other people's work. So I stole A. Alvarez's phrase, the uneasy trance will never break. The poem is narrated by Snow White. I also write fiction for middle grade readers and young adult readers. And not that there isn't plenty of money in poetry, but there's more in middle grade fiction. So when I would do school visits, and if I could find a young woman who would read this poem, it just kills to hear someone 12 or 13 or 15 read as if she were Snow White. This is Snow White after the dwarves have, well, let me go back and set this up. Not all of you remember the Snow White story and its details. She's come to live with the dwarves, and she is not the brightest bulb in the chandelier. Miss White isn't. The dwarves tell her, do not open the door for anyone. And the Wicked Queen shows up 3 times, once with a corset that will choke her, once with a poison comb, and once with the famous poison apple. So the dwarves come and rescue her from the corset and from the comb, but they're too late. When she bites the apple, she goes into a coma, and they put her in a glass coffin. It's just the story of Snow White and the dwarves breaks my heart because she leaves them, and then there they are. So this is the long setup for this poem, which is narrated, remember, not by an 84-year-old man, but by Snow White, who is barely a teenager. Here's what she says once she's been awakened from this terrible sleep. There I lay with a piece of apple caught in my throat. I wasn't dead. I wasn't alive, not in the usual sense. But trance is the perfect word. Uneasy trance. From my glass coffin, I could see the same sky move from light to light to dark again and again, and always the dwarf to stand guard. They took turns, like they took turns cooking and washing up. Sometimes Happy polished the glass coffin, Bashful looked askance, but alone with me they bared their souls. They weren't sure that I could hear. I can't repeat the things they said. They're private beyond privacy, a privacy transmuted into mystery. They loved me, truly. One kiss from any of them, and I would have sat up and yawned. Maybe they didn't want to stand on a box to kiss me. Maybe they didn't know how to kiss. I was bored as any figure in a snow globe. I was happy to see the prince. He loved me in the customary true love way. And after his customary kiss, I got to take a deep breath. As I said goodbye to the dwarves, I whispered to each of them, "Your secrets are safe with me." They wept like children then and held onto my skirt as I reluctantly tore myself away. And one more. A prose poem called An American Chronicle. If we were together in a workshop, I would show you the 5 versions this poem went through before it would yield to me in a way. You know, my ministrations, my flowers and candy. But eventually we became friends. It was not a prose poem to begin with. It rhymed at one point, which didn't work out at all. But eventually it came around. So here's a poem, my last poem. Thank you for listening. It's lovely to see you all. An American Chronicle. I'm sitting with Ben drinking lemonade and gin. We're talking about his great-great-grandfather who built this porch from field stones hauled up from the river by enormous Clydesdale horses named Beauty and Gray Prince, and how in those days men coddled their animals, gave them amorous names, and dressed them in velvet, then yelled at their wives and made them cry. Fire in the mountains drives animals into suburbs where bears knock over the frozen margarita machines and poop in the hot tub. Newsmen roll up their sleeves. Lights in the studios flicker and hiss. Birds drop leaflets about how crummy spring is, and it's all our fault. My mother joined a cult of other disappointed mothers, and Ben's fiance just left him for someone with an electric bicycle. Last night, my friend Sasha dialed a suicide hotline and was put on hold. So we're going to call Sasha and ask her to come over and bring chips, because lately it seems like everyone we know is dialing the suicide hotline, and the only reason we're all here now is because it's busy. Thank you very much. What a pleasure to read to you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And I did put in a link of your Goodreads page for everyone to see your books and where they were published and look so they can look for them. And thanks for coming on such short notice to both of you. We get too few humorous poems and no one realizes how hard that is to do. Thanks so much. Now we're going to start with the open mic. And we have all the usual suspects plus a few. So we'll start with James Keane. You have to unmute yourself though. And it's 5 minutes for 2 poems, whichever comes first. You're still muted, Jim.
There we go.
Yeah.
What a relief. Everyone's gonna say, oh, really? Anyway, 45 years ago, I went into the Pilgrim Diner in Cedar Grove and encountered waitress behind the counter who later became, 5 years later, became my wife. And this August, early August, we'll be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary. And I have a lot to thank her for. So I thought, let me write a poem called Thank You for Being My Wife. And it's, there's some good stuff. Some of it's funny, some's wise ass, some is not so funny. But thank you for being my wife. Do you remember me? I asked when I accidentally ran into you at the gym. I should, you retorted. I only serve you 3 times a week. Thank you for being my wife. I'm 29, I said, when you asked. You're mature for your age, you said. You just turned 23. Thank you for being my wife. Awful, was your reply. Instead of the usual, fine, when I asked you, how are you doing? Sitting at your counter at the Pilgrim Diner. I never asked you again. You told me anyway. Thank you for being my wife. When I bugged you for the umpteenth time with, did I leave the car lights on? You snapped. Yeah. And the doors are wide open and the engine's running. Thank you for being my wife. All kidding aside, when my father did what he did and died, you pulled and pulled and pulled me back from the darkness. It made my life seem pointless. Thank you for being my wife. Days became nights, became decades of your unwavering love. Even in the face of anger and unkindness that burden you with strife you don't deserve and never will. But please know this. I've loved you half my life. The better half, the better still. Thank you for being my wife. And thank you for listening. And in keeping with the, do I still have time, Robbie? One more, okay. This is a poem that I wrote again to my wife because for her heroism in bringing Nicholas, our son, home many, many years ago. And I call it my hero, and I always introduce it. So I'd like to now read the poem. My wife, for some reason, it's her favorite poem of mine. It's called My Hero, and everybody goes, ah. So, my hero. While you were busily absorbed in dirt and spade work, I was the clean one, gardener of the barely begun, who, hapless, eyed your radiant smile, grown expectant, grow sad, and sorrow churn whatever warmth soothed your heart to dread. Too warm to be numbed, dead. Your tears will blossom when I least expected them, and anger through me every time they did. So when a child only of God came true, plucked by you, Virgin Mother, from a squalid death at the end of squalor, my resolve to be worthy of the hero in you grew. And so, thank you for the dirt and spade work, for the bitter weeds you sadly churned to flowers, for exulting in words that sprouted oh so quickly when I asked you, somewhat rudely, well, how is he? He's ours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next reader is Rose.
Okay, I unmuted myself properly this time. And I have chosen a couple of short poems because last time I did Jim in with one that was far too long and I didn't realize. So I felt very guilty ever since. The first one is from my book from the COVID times, The Rain Girl. And it's about Virginia Woolf. You all know that she had a rather complicated life and that her marriage slowly went south and in the end she killed herself. So this is to her. When nothing is left. for Virginia Woolf. Those first times, they would on occasion run into each other, feeling something, substance. She noticed it one summer night. The moon had penetrated her own reflection in the large sliding doors. After that, her husband would frequently reach through her for the drink she had placed on the mantel. Gradually, he also lost density. The house filled with mirrors, confirming their essential natures. One Wednesday morning, as he wished her good morning, she grabbed his reflection, walked out through the garden door, and drifted towards the river, picking up stones on the way. And the other one is about death. Why not? La muerte. In English, we have no obvious genders for nouns. At least they don't find expression in their articles. In Spanish, death is feminine. La muerte will come and take you home. How soothing to think one day I'll be giving myself into a boundless woman's keep. Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. Thanks, Rose. Dick?
I'll start with a very short one. I've had the great good fortune of befriending Alicia Ostreicher, and also attending workshops of hers on Midrash, which is sort of interpreting or restating Bible stories in order to sort of bring them forward. This one's called Eve's First Bite of the Apple. Here's what I know. The flesh of this thing gives way to my teeth, just as the tender parts of me do to my own touch. Both sluice, so sweet, move me to tremble and breathe in ways that break words. And now I know why the God has forbidden them. He, and maybe the man, must not want me to know what grows in the earth of me, absent their hand on the plow. And this is a second Eve poem, not exactly a midrash, but responding to the great good work of a woman named Alice Meliat, who worked her whole life to get women involved or accepted as sports people, and in fact was responsible for women competing in the Olympics after 50 years of their existence. And this is called The 7 Days of Creation of Objectification. In the beginning, after the God made light and dry land and the waters and Adam and Eve and even a little bit of spite, he created the first Olympic Games. The Eve excelled in the 40-cubit tree climbing. The Adam was world's best at laying around under the shade of palms, watching the fawns weave in Eden's breeze. The prizes were fruit hung about the winners' necks by serpents who, in a world of firsts, were determined to be seen. From his seat in the bleachers, the God decreed the games begin and saw it was good. He wanted more, more, he shouted, more. And thus he demanded the winning athletes take up swords. But the Eve would not strike the Adam, and the Adam hid behind the tree. And the God raised up his hand and commanded them to fight. But the Eve laid down her blade, even as the man pulled his from his scabbard, and was distracted by its weight and feel and the smoothness of the shuddering steel. It felt so good, the swing and stroke, and the God in the stands did not really understand the man's guttural moans. And on the evening and morning of the 5th day, the God asked, "Was this good?" because the god felt nothing stirring under his toga. So he stripped the Eve nude and saw her skin so smooth, and just thus engaged his godly gaze, groped and prodded and prayed. And on the evening and the morning of the sixth day, he proclaimed it was good, really, really good. And thus ended the first Olympiad, and the rules were set. Only those who raised up swords could compete, and those who lay them down so their hands could hold something besides steel, could swaddle the young and make meals from pounded roots and fruit, were commanded to naked themselves before the god and the man to see, and must only do labor that was decreed. And it was the evening and the morning again and again and again, when only the men could play, and the god who gawked at the Eve said it was all good, and the Adam agreed, if only there were more scabbards in which to thrust his sword, and he had more necks for medals of supremacy to adorn. Thank you.
Whew. Okay. Our next reader is Judy Kronenfeld.
Hi. I'm going to read a couple of quasi-spring poems, one normal length and the other very short. This one talks about cities, but it's New York I have in mind, as always. City benches in the sun. The way people sometimes sit on benches in cities, as if the April air and breeze and sun were not available elsewhere or for long. So they must tilt their faces upward, must even close their eyes and not talk or observe the scene. Just let the breeze and warmth flow over them. Is it simply a matter of choosing to collect oneself for a while after visiting a sick mother in the hospital, or going to the employment agency or the unemployment office, or taking the kids to their father's for his week, or several of these in one rush day? But no, even the dowagers of leisure in their 8-room apartments feel compelled to dress themselves on a glorious spring morning, to descend in the elevator, to nod and smile as the doorman, opening the glass and shiny brass door, greets them by name, and to walk over to join the stream of humanity, a small branch of which is sitting now on a well-used bench near a tree, just leafing out in palest green on the median of this crowded two-way street, their chins lifted, sun glowing red-orange on the inside of their lids, basking as if on the Riviera. And this tiny one, where the title segues into the poem. Dear spring, geyser me straight into your blue bird-chip radiance. Lean me into your long light. Porch me to watch cloud capers. Swirl me into your scented air. Dissolve my wintry drifts of sorrows. Thanks.
Okay. Beautiful, Judy. Thank you. Penelope, it's your turn.
Okay. So I knew this was going to be a fun reading when I saw that it was Charles Webb and Ron Koertge. Thank you both very much for your reading. I enjoyed that. I brought 2 very short poems. One is in the current verse virtual, and before I read it, I would just like to mention that as far as I know, I'm in pretty good health. So don't be worried at this point. Note to the executors. When I die, it's fine to give away whatever anyone will take and toss the rest. I'm passing on some books now, one by one, to friends and little libraries, but want to reread all before they go, and so it's slow. With any notebooks that you find in the recycle bin, thoughts I didn't take to other pages were too thin. And the second poem is called Revising My Hair. I've been cutting it for years, and I like to. It helps to keep my standards low, like when I write a poem or cook. Expect little and saute words or vegetables or hair for pleasure. Minus the pandemic, I would not have dared to tame my mane myself. I take it snip by snip, happy I'm alive, willing to look a fool. Thanks for listening.
Good to see you, Penelope. It's been a while. And our next reader is Alex Umlas, who has been even longer since I've seen you. So please read.
I have one poem, Rules for Revision. Break each line with beauty, falling snow or something else that's clever, but not too clever. Clever looks like cleaver, and that is what you need to take to your poem. Chop the excess sinews, the thes, those creepy adjectives that detract from the poem. Be specific. Write, no scrawl, Brayburns, or red delicious over apple. Poodle, not dog. Puddle, not water. Fill your poem with peas or toads or gardens or wait. Didn't I read that somewhere? Read! Then focus on the real, but only if it seems real. Like I believe that Williams had a wheelbarrow and that it was red and glazed with rain. Just don't look up what not to do in a plem and misspell poem because the O and the L are so darn close together, because you'll only get articles on mucus killing foods and how to clear your throat. Stay on task. Don't let the poem drift to places you can't come back from. Hold the wheel and drive. Wait, that's an Incubus lyric. Move lyric to the previous line so 2 lines don't end with lyric. Move lyric to the previous line so 2 don't end with incubus. Try not to say incubus 3 times in your poem. Instead, get stuck. Take a walk. Walk the dog. Oh no, not the dog again. Walk your grandma. How did she get here? Know that no matter how hard you try to avoid writing about your grandma, she will show up. Use imagery. Include her orange tic-tac breath, or some bells, 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 bells. Use similes too, but not if they are about the moon. If the moon does fall into your poem, smash it to shards, then edit out shards. Please don't make me explain why. Reverse, reverse. Writing a poem is like riding a bike. Write it. Be sure to leave everything open at the end, like wonder, like windows, like wound, but keep the poem on 1 page. Concise, as to not drone on and on. Writing a poem is like going to war, but the poem is your enemy. Kill your darlings. When in doubt, put down the pen and shoot the poem in the heart.
Huh. Is that what high school students do to you? Well, thanks for coming, and I hope that you'll show up at some of the other readings now. Our next reader is Sandra Giedeman, who I don't see at these readings very often either. Sandy, unmute yourself. Sandy.
I got it. Okay, I do that every time, so nothing new.
Yeah, I do it too.
Okay, I have one poem. 4th of July, 1950. I'm 6. holding a burnt sparkler. My sister makes crazy eights until hers dies too. Wilson Park, weeping willows, time to go home. Smell of gunpowder lingering from fireworks. It is dark walking through the trees. Father says the night landscape reminds him of France, a World War II battle when he was an infantry foot soldier. Two of my brothers are now not yet born and now long dead. That night stuck like no others. Was it the shadowy trees, the smell of black powder that triggered Father's memories? I remember the now spent wand of ashes, delicate as smoke, toppling into nothing, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the blue chlorine smell of the swimming pool, that Midwest summer of heat waves and polio, cherry bombs and firecrackers. That's it. Done.
Robbie.
I did it to myself. So Gary, it is now your turn.
Okay. This first poem is also in the current verse virtual. What Simon Never Said. And it has an epigraph from Paul Simon's Koertge. Everything looks worse in black and white. In school, the yearbooks always call them candids, snapshots that capture people, not poses. Sorting family photos in a box, sifting layers of pale pictures. We try to trace the ages, frame the faces. We still can see. Sons once gaped at the cat, ran naked down the hall. Once shaved their heads, grew their hair into long babe magnets. Simon sang in praise of Kodachrome, how it colors our memories. But Simon never said, colors do not last. Never told us how quickly colors lose their grip, leave us with only a box of fading, ghosts that once wore our faces, used our names. And I have a second one called Eye of the Dark. What do you see when you lie in your bed, alone in the dark? What do you see when you've done what you've done, said what you've said, reasoned what you've reasoned? What do you see when all the things you've left undone, left unsaid, are still undone, unsaid? What do you do when there's nothing to do but sleep and sleep won't come? What do you see when all the thoughts you left unthought rustle in the dark? What do you see? What looks back when you stare into the unblinking eye of the dark? Thank you.
I've always wondered, is that a real quilt or is that a photograph?
That's a real, what's a photograph of a real quilt?
Aha. Okay, so somewhere in between. Lavina, are you up for reading your poem?
Sure, I've got two, and I don't know whether to read the serious one or the more humorous one.
I would read the humorous one under the
Okay.
circumstances.
Let me find it. Okay. Excuse me. This is in verse virtual too. So it's called Passage. The rational me had lost control of the steering, my hands unsure where to be, feeling in my hands intensified by desire, greed. Our legs tangled and we didn't know when, if ever, to apply the brakes. Here was the clutch, his palm on my breast, his lips pressed my mouth, my neck. It took two for this excursion on an unmarked track along which we improvised signals. We cared where we'd end up, yet the journey was almost all. We somehow stayed on track, never landing in a ditch. Each of us, both key and ignition switch, the accelerator pressed down, then let up. That trip was a long time ago, a passage I had only understood in theory until then, the roadmap having been withheld, although I doubt it would have helped. Student drivers, we passed the test, the one requirement, our willingness.
Thank you. If the second one's short, you could read that.
Okay, this one I wrote during COVID, out for a walk. A louder than normal rustling low in the eucalyptus where we cross to the road. We peer intently. Someone hiding? A park security officer once asked if we saw any homeless, said they sometimes wait for people to leave their cars, then break in. Maybe a bad idea to take this route at the edge of the orchard that flanks the citrus park. I conjure Bigfoot. David spots a squirrel going up a tree, and for a moment that reassures me. Lizards rustle dry leaves. I look over my shoulder. David tells me about a science fiction plot, a show I would not watch, too violent. The leaves flutter on one tree in a row of trees. I keep my focus on that spot at the same time, trying to listen to the story while ignoring the parts about mutilation. The car now far behind us in the lot. I grip the keys deep in my pocket, maintain a casual pace, even when the birds go silent.
Thank you. If Jim Lewis would like to read, you still have a chance.
I accept.
All right.
I'm going to share a poem about a childhood event that has stayed with me for a very long time. And it involves plants and my grandmother. The title of the poem is Sage Tea. In New Mexico, where I grew up, the only thing I knew as sage was scrub sage, and the leaves could be dried like so many plants. Can you hear me okay? All right. Sage tea. Cowboys drink their coffee mostly black, eat their steak with beans and spuds, sometimes a wild onion for flavor. But when a stomach starts to rumble, there's no reaching for store-bought cures, not when the high desert supplies its own. Scrub sage, leaves dried and steeped in an old cast iron kettle will do the trick. Best remedy ever for belly aches. Tastes so bitter going down, he thinks there's got to be a better way to stop his guts from misbehaving when suddenly they do. They stop right up. Cowboys healed and ready to ride for days unhindered by any need for nature stops. Miracle drug. As a child, I once complained to Grandma, who lovingly supplied me with sage tea, which didn't solve the problem, but did stop me from ever talking about it again. That's all.
Thank you so much. And that's the end of our open mic and our reading for today. I'm going to discontinue the recording, and if people want to ask questions or chat, you're welcome to do so. And I'll go and try to dig up the link for my Words with You reading on Tuesday the 16th, where Hetty Harper will be the feature. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you for being here, and thank you to our features.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great audience. Appreciate it.
A great group.
You're welcome back anytime. If you just go to that link I gave you, First Virtual 2024, you can send your your reservation for the next reading in there, or listen to older ones that are already up on the archive.
I haven't joined very many groups, but this is one I definitely, one of the best, if not the
Well,
best, seriously.
Thank you. It's so good to have you. And in January, my reading Words with You, which is kind of an independent reading where the readings aren't recorded, will be merging with the Poetry Salon, and we'll be having interviews with the readers, and there will be a podcast, and everything will be on video there too.
Okay.
So you'll be able to catch things that you weren't able to attend for that series as well. But meanwhile, look out for Hetty Hopper's reading on the 16th. And I don't have a link handy right now.
Robbie, I thought
because-
for a second you said Hedda Hopper.
Yeah, she's kind of dead, but
I know.
but we can all sit together in a circle.
I thought
and
that'd be
hold
really
hands
good.
and maybe she'll dress us. What
Yeah.
is that? Oh, that's your motorcycle in the background. I thought that was a spaceship or something, Jim.
Holy,
It could be. It could be.
Yeah,
wow.
Very
That's-
nice.
That's
He's
a
a
photograph I
photographer.
took at a
Yeah.
4th of July parade a number of years ago,
Oh,
that is
and
so
cropped
cool.
that piece out of it.
Hmm.
Well,
Robbie,
thanks.
can I ask Charles a question?
Sure.
Now that you're retired, and congratulations, by the way, do you have any plans on holding any workshops so that some of us can benefit from your wisdom?
Well, yeah, I keep that wisdom in storage. Yeah, I don't actually. I'm not sure what I'm gonna be doing different. I've been working a lot on short fiction, and I've been doing some fishing, and that's about it. But yeah, I mean, I certainly would do a workshop. I just I guess I'd have to be encouraged to do it. I haven't given it a lot of thought, honestly. I mean, I think I'd probably still be teaching there, except the drive got so horrible.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm really unsettled in retirement. I mean, this fall will be the first time that the first fall I haven't taught in a lot of years. So it's going to be kind of weird, but yeah, I mean, I keep busy with writing. I wish I had a better answer.
Charles, if I not imposing, where are you based? Where do you live?
I live in Glendale.
California. Oh,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I taught for many years at Cal State Long Beach. People always lived there, but I never did.
Well, that's a nightmare, that drive, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can't. You know, when I first was setting up my living arrangements, it was really no big deal to drive down there, but it got worse and worse and worse, and even worse coming back.
So the 11 a.m. that's broadcast as this, it actually is your 11 a.m.
Oh yeah, yeah. Where are you?
New Jersey, Pompton Lakes.
Oh,
So we're we're off in the stratosphere.
I see.
Yeah.
But it's perfect. 11 o'clock is fine. Perfectly fine for me. 11 o'clock wouldn't be so bad either. Might be awake.
Anybody else have any questions or answers or musings on the times? Or
No.
Well, thanks for being here, everybody. And
Thank you.
I don't have the link for Words with You, but if you know Hetty, you can probably find the information at her page on Facebook, because I can't find anything on Facebook anymore since AI mixed everything up and prohibited half the things that I want to do. So it's a bummer. What can I say?
Yeah.
But thank you for being here, and we'll see you maybe on Tuesday, maybe next month.
Now, Robbie.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Robbie.
Guys, take
Robbie.
care.
Thank you all.
Writing.
Thank you all.
Wait a minute. Did you want to say something, Jim?
Yes, you never did turn the recording off, so with your permission, once we're done and you've sent me the link, I will trim our discussion after you said you were going to stop recording.
Oh, I pushed the button. I don't know what happened.
At least on my screen, it says you're still recording.